Hello, family. Coming to you live. Trying to fix my screen with Tuesday transmissions. I have not been on here in a little bit. Wanted to tell you the story of Yeshua's conception. That was one of the videos I promised I would tell. I'm telling stories of supernatural occurrences, experiences with Mother Mary and her story, Mary Magdalene and her story, the story of Mary Magdalene and Yeshua, as I've seen through quantum hypnosis. And what's exciting to share today for me is the story of Yeshua. I believe that all these stories are coming through a lot of people on this planet. I feel like we're all fractals of these energies and these stories, and it's really important to share them, as I know there's many people that probably have lots of stories to tell about ancient times and about awakening and about our own powers. And I feel really called to share the conception story of Yeshua because it was a powerful experience for me, and I don't really share it very often, and it needs to be shared. I'm sure there's many women who have conception stories to share that are really powerful as well, and would love to connect with other women around their conception stories. And that's different than the birth story. So I'm not telling how he was born, I'm telling how he was conceived in the spiritual realms. It's a spiritual conception. And after reading the story of Mother Mary and Isis and Hathor in the Sophia codes, I've recognized that there's a mastery in energy where we can create energetic connection to the spiritual realms and manifest energy quite powerfully and purely. And when the story is told of Mother Mary and an Immaculate conception of Yeshua, I feel like that is the story of connecting to the spiritual conception. And so let me get into my story. I think that might be well told to explain what I'm saying. So I was in a medicinal space, in a very deep ceremonial space. And in that space, I was sent up very, very quickly into another realm. And my experience in my body of being in this other realm was that it was very reverent. It was a very reverent space. So in that space, and I might close my eyes to reconnect to the story within my body, I felt all of these different beings around me. It was like a council of what I feel was an ascended mastership, like a council of all of these beings. And they were different sizes, different shapes, different even colors. And some were cloaked and some had hoods and covers. Yet they were all in this circle. And so when I was sent into this space, I immediately felt like I dropped to my knees. I dropped to my knees into a prayer mudra, and I put my hands in Namaste prayer right at my heart. And I was literally bowing in reverence because it felt like, whoa, where am I? I'm in this very important place. And I need to be humble. I need to be humble in this place. And as I opened up to that experience of humility and the humbleness, I heard a voice. And that voice said, we've been waiting for you. We've been waiting for you here for quite some time. And in that, they also said, we know this is a great responsibility. And we know it's a great responsibility, and this will be quite challenging for you. We also know that you're up for this task. And then they proceeded to tell me a little bit about this task as being part of my ascended mastership. And I didn't know what that meant then. And this is 6 years ago. But in reading the Sophia Code and connecting with different ascended masters and a lineage of priestesses, I'm now beginning to understand what that actually meant. Because all of those women, Isis, Hathor, Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene, are all of a lineage where they had their earthly lives and they completed initiations, and then they ascended to a mastership, almost like, you're apprentice and then you become a master. And I feel like we're all on that trajectory, right? We're all ascending. And so this is part of one of my initiations, as is motherhood, right? Motherhood is an initiation. It's a great initiation. Parenting is a great initiation when done consciously. So I thought, ascended mastership, what is this about? And I was like, whoa, okay, again, I'm humble, I'm bowing to this experience. And I watched everybody's hands move over to my right frame, and I could see this immaculate light. Like, it was like the brightest light I've ever seen. It was just like whoosh, this huge cosmic orb, and it was white and blue. So there was this blue tone to it, and it was a huge, huge light, and it was a sphere, it was an orb, a circle, and it was pulsing in the corner. I didn't really know what it was, so I just attuned myself to it. And then I watched as all the hands of these beings went around this orb, and it was like they kind of moved it towards my body. And in doing so, I turned towards that orb, and I just closed my eyes. That within the field of already being an inner sight, an inner universe, and felt this incredible light starting to move literally into my body. And as that was happening, I could feel fingers, like all the fingers of these beings moving into my womb space, moving into my belly, into my womb. And it was like a pushing sensation. And it was filling me up with energy. I mean, it was like the most bizarre feeling. It was like a pushing and a filling simultaneously, like I was a balloon being filled up. And the energy was just enormous. It was so enormous. And it was not comfortable. It really wasn't comfortable. It was like, like feeling squeezed and pushed. But then absorbed at the same time. And then that feeling subsided, and it was like this incredible, ecstatic feeling of light filling my entire being. And in that like ecstasy of light, I was like, and I literally got shot right out of the experience. I mean, it was so bizarre. I was in it, and then I was literally shot out of it. And I remember being shot down into my body and looking around the room and going, did anybody see that? Was anybody with me? Nobody was there, except, of course, I mean, everybody was there, the people that were in this ceremonial experience. And it was me, it was me in this physical 3D reality in this body. And I thought to myself, wow, what just happened? And I had a hard time kind of comprehending what had just happened. And then just sat in meditation for hours, just with that in my body, and feeling like, did I conceive, of a child? I knew that was an orb of light. Did I just conceive of a being? And I brought this to my partner, to the father of my child, and I told him what had happened. And he said, I need to check in with my higher self. I need to check in with my higher self and see, like, am I supposed to be a part of this? Is this an immaculate conception? And came back and said, no, I am participating in this. This is my participation too. And we made that contract. We sealed that contract and said, yes, this is what we're doing. Now, at that time, I had already So to backtrack a little bit, I had been on an IUD for 6 years. So I hadn't had a period. I hadn't had a menstrual cycle in 6 years. So that happened in that ceremony, and that was in January. And I found out I was pregnant. Let's just say I found out that I was pregnant in February. And that was my first period. So like I had one period, one menstrual cycle after removing an IUD that I had one IUD for 3 years and another IUD for 3 years, so 6 years of IUDs. I had one period, one menstrual cycle, and then after that ceremony, I conceived. And I was 43 years old. So when I gave birth, so I was just shy of 43 when I got pregnant. And so, you know, that was not something that I had imagined was going to happen later on in my 40s. It was not something that I had planned for. And it was something that was foretold to me, interestingly enough, by a seer, by an intuitive healer that I work with, who said, you have a being that's been sitting on your third eye for a very, very long time that's waiting for you to just align with this being. And so then I went to the beach after that ceremony, and I sat on Venice Beach for 45 minutes of meditation. And after 45 minutes of meditation, I had a voice come to me and speak a name. And it really was spoken not in auditory language, but in symbols and then in letters. And then I trying to translate it and speak it. So essentially I saw codes of light, which now I know are codes of light language. I didn't know that then. And they reformulated. They were codes, and then they were symbols, and then they kind of made their way into a name. And then I was able to see it in alphabetic, or Roman, I guess you would call it, letters, English letters. And then phonetically kind of was like, yeah, yes, Yeshua. But I didn't know back then what Yeshua was. I didn't know that name. I grew up Catholic. My whole life, I grew up Catholic, hearing Jesus, but I'd never heard the name Yeshua. And so I looked it up on Google. I Googled it, Yeshua, and I thought it said Yahweh. At first it was kind of Yes, and I couldn't tell the last couple letters, and then I figured out what it was. I realized it was a Hebrew name, and then I looked it up, and it's salvation, and it was Jesus, name of Jesus. And I was like, wow, that's incredible. That's so awesome that this being wants to call himself Yeshua. And so I didn't know how to pronounce it at the time. I found out later that Yahshua was translated to Joshua, and Joshua is another kind of derivative of that name as well, and Yahweh. But I wanted to call him Yeshua because that's what came to me. And YES is an affirmation. And as a coach and as a healer and as a yogi, I always wanted to remember positive affirmations. And so to be able to call this child Yes felt really real and very sweet. And so we nicknamed him Yes. And until it was hard to say yes or no, when he was learning yes or no, that was confusing. So we went to Yeshua. But he does go by the nickname Yes or Yesh sometimes. And so that's the conception story of my son, Yeshua, which is really cool. I love this story. It feels so spiritually connected to who I am and to the stories that are coming through me. And I'm very excited to share the story of Yeshua and Mary Magdalene. as I've understood through quantum healing hypnosis sessions, that I have that information in my Akashic records, in my past life history. And so having a son without any historical information really about any of that, I just only grew up in the Catholic religion, understanding a different story than what I know in my body. And frankly, taking a long time to explain all of this because I felt so much shame and discomfort around religion. And I would walk into church and I would see the body of Jesus, at that time knowing him as Jesus, on the cross, and I would just cry uncontrollably. I just couldn't get it together. Sometimes I would just sit there and cry, and I would hide it from my family because I didn't understand why I was having such deep emotion about it. But I would say, why would they do that to him, And it was a hard story to explain to a child, to see a man pinned to a cross with nails through his feet and his hands. Just that alone, even without all the story and history, is pretty fear-based and pretty horrible to look at. And I would just cry. And I feel like there's a much deeper story and connection there that I was actually attuning to, that was felt on a very deep energetic level. And it came up through a variety of ceremonies that I had connected with the energy of Yeshua and Jesus as a witness to his passing, to his death originally. And to come out with this story feels raw and vulnerable because it feels like, there could be a lot of people that think I'm a nut, and that's okay. And I've just come to terms with that's okay, because there are many stories, and this is just a story. This is a story that I know, and a truth that I know. And so I believe it's important to tell it. So I'm grateful for the story of Yeshua. I'm grateful for the conception story of Yeshua. And we'll be sharing the story of Mary, Magdalene, and Yeshua as I know it, as I feel it, and understand it in the fractals of my own records in my being and my body. So thank you for listening to this story, and if you have any questions or if you have any comments, please feel free to comment below. This will be on YouTube as well, on my channel. So thank you for listening. I really appreciate it. Have a beautiful day. Namaste.